Hi, welcome to the grammar workshop. I'm Amber Scott, and I am going to teach you a little bit about grammar and the common mistakes that we see here. And we'll get going with that. This is the final panel for the entire conference, so I'm super excited about that. Well, let's get started. First of all, why is grammar important? I know a lot of people are like, it's not that important, as long as I get the words down. But it is really important because it helps you express your ideas logically, and your words will have the right effect on your reader, and they'll pay better attention to your story. Plus, it boosts your credibility as writers and communicators. So, for example, if you read some stuff, sometimes when you look at fan fiction, for example, where people are not really looking to have the best grammar or whatever, it can really detract from what you're trying to say across. It's harder to read, and you kind of it slows down your reader because they're trying to interpret what you mean. Do you mean this, or it just does not look right? And if you are a more advanced writer, it does make you look less professional, and I don't think that is what we are aiming for when we are writing. So that's why it is important to pay attention to. I will say though, a lot of people do write their draft first and not really pay attention to grammar, and they'll do it later, kind of thing. You can do that. I don't really like doing it that way because if you write the entire draft and you're not really paying attention to stuff, the first draft is okay to be more loose about. Your second draft, when you really want to pay attention, more because you can easily get into the habit of not writing correctly. So you want to be able to learn how to make sure every time you write something, so something is easy to read and not wrought with errors and stuff. So, because the more you write it, the more you are ingraining that habit. So that's why that is important to not do that. So the first thing we're going to look at is run-on sentences. So see, I gave a couple examples of run-on sentences. Well, the first example is this. I went to the store, I bought some groceries, and then I went to the gym. And after that, I cooked dinner, and finally I watched a movie. Oh, that was a long read for me because there were like no commas, no clauses, So that is a run-on sentence. You're just jamming everything together. The other example is the sun was setting, the sky was turning orange, the air was getting cooler, people started walking their dogs, children played in the park. There's literally no commas or phrases or anything. So these are just multiple independent clauses joined together. That's when we say this is the run-on sentence. You want to like split it into a couple of sentences. So, so it's really easy to spot when I read it out loud because I'm literally almost running out of breath trying to read everything. So reading out loud is going to be really helpful to spot this. So yeah, you need some punctuation or conjunction like and or but or something. So what are conjunctions? I just said you need conjunction to help you run on sentences. So I have this handy chart to show you what conjunctions are. So the first column is we call them fanboys. It sounds funny, but your conjunction is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. That is one of your junctions. Then you have your other ones that you can use. There's supporting conjunctions, like although, after, before, because, as, even if, even though, if, in order that, once, since, so that, then, though, unless, until, when, where, while. So those are ways to split up your sentences. So you can say, I went to the store, I bought this. I went to the store and I bought this. That is Now it's no longer a run-on sentence. It makes more sense. Then you have your compared one like either or, neither nor, because you have to have both and, whether or something like that, and so on. So obviously this presentation will be available in your recording and stuff. So you'll definitely see all of this later. But I just wanted to point out what conjunctions were, and that's how you use them. Number 2 is commas. John is always getting at me for my commas. So I figured I better put a slide in about commas. And when do we use commas? The first use, the usual, is to separate items in a list. We bought apples, oranges, grapes, and bananas. So use commas when you have more than 2 things in a list. So for example, if I only bought the apples and oranges, yes, the conjunctions are for, the junctions help you with your correcting your run-on sentences. Yes. So if we say if we only bought apples and oranges, then we would say we bought apples and oranges with no commas. So if we bought 3 things, we bought apples, oranges, and comma, and grapes, right? But there is a disclaimer. If you have the commas, if you notice on this slide, I have a comma after grapes and bananas. That's the last thing. This is called the Oxford comma. Well, you probably have heard that, and it's a little bit confusing, but that is literally what it's called. If you have a list of things, and then between the last thing you did and the second last, you put a comma in, that's an Oxford comma. The American US English uses the Oxford comma quite often. British English doesn't use the Oxford comma. So that makes it a little bit funny. So sometimes you have like somebody else read it from a different country, then going to say, "Oh, you don't need this," and sometimes you're just going to do what you're like, "Yes, you absolutely do need this." So that's why sometimes it's a little bit of a not controversial, but there's a disagreement sometimes when you use it. But here in Canada, where I'm from, we basically just do whatever we feel like. Sometimes we use Oxford comma. Sometimes we don't, because we're kind of between the two. So it makes it a little bit funny. So other uses of commas is after introductory elements. So, for example, after the meeting, comma, we went out for lunch. Because if we didn't have that comma, after the meeting, we went out for lunch. That's actually a little bit of a run-on, Tiny run-on it does not necessarily mean a whole bunch of words altogether. It can be tiny like that. Non-essential information. So, for example, my sister, comma, who lives in Texas, comma, is visiting us next week. So, because we can take out that clause, who lives in Texas, we can take it out. My sister is visiting us next week. But because we have that little bit of information that, we don't need to have, but we do, we'll separate that with a comma. With the direct address, Bill, comma, can you call me later? So you want that little comma too, because that is just how that is done. Next, we have less is more. You don't need too many commas for everything. Because some people just pop in the commas everywhere because they think they're super important. They are, but you can definitely have too many. Because if you have too many commas, it creates too many pauses and decreases your readability. So, for example, I need to walk further, comma, but I'm reluctant. Here we don't actually need that comma because the conjunction, but. So if I need to walk further, but I'm reluctant, that sounds better than I need to walk further, but I'm reluctant. You can, but it typically sounds better without. Next thing we'll look at is sentence structure. The sentence structure there's a few things that you want to be aware of. You want the sentence structure makes you vary your sentences. So you don't always want to do noun plus verb, like Tom walked to the store. So Tom is your noun, walked is your verb. So a lot of people, especially I find a lot of like beginner writers sometimes, or even really anybody, to be honest, will do a whole bunch of noun plus verb, and alternate, and it just sounds I'm sorry, it sounds elementary because that's where we teach our children how to do it. We teach our children how to use the noun plus verbs. But then at some point we need to be adults and vary the design instruction to put something else in front of your noun instead. Pronouns. We don't want to overuse the pronouns. Then because we want to make it clear who the person is. So using too many he or she with a very few names, especially in the context of multiple characters, it makes it very confusing. So especially if you have a scene with we do, yes. If you have a scene with especially multiple characters are all the same gender, it's going like you have all he, you're going to be very confused which he we're talking about. So yeah, just throw in the names. And sometimes I know people are like, I don't want to throw in too many names. It sounds repetitive. But really if you use the names, it's fine because you're making it more clear. You're doing clarity and all that. So that is super cool. Yeah, it's constantly starting with a name. It's also really repetitive. I've noticed this with some people sometimes. You critique like say, I don't know, Jordan said this, and the next paragraph is Jordan saw that, and then the next paragraph, Jordan shoved this away, and then the next paragraph, Jordan did. So, and then you literally have like 4 or 5 paragraphs all starting with Jordan. So that is another way to vary your sentence structure. So also, this is also my Waterloo. John also pointed out to me all the time. I do this, constantly starting with a participle phrase. For example, pulling at her shirt, comma, Mary stared nervously at the door. I do this because I'm so into not doing point 1, which is the noun plus verb. I want to avoid the noun plus verb, but I overdo it, and then I start everything with a participle phrase. Oh my oops. So I have to be aware for myself as well to not do too much of one thing. You want to vary everything, and it makes it more smooth. Okay. We are now on to filler words. Filler words. What are filler words? Filler words are words in your story that you don't need, and you basically just making more words for the sake of words. So most filler words you can cut, and that is really useful when you go back, especially for editing. You're trying to cut down words that you have way too many of, and you have way too much story, and you are trying to narrow down just those few little words. These are the words you want to cut. So that, for example, we don't even need to use that much. So, he just saw this. Well, it'd be better to say he saw that. So this is so stupid. I'm just kidding. But there's something very, very the big one. He was very sad. You don't need the very. You just say he was sad, right? So if you're using too many of these, what you actually need to do is that's why sometimes we'll say, this isn't the filler word, make it stronger, but using different words but if you go through this, like sometimes when I'm editing, I will have a poster of this filler words chart in a different screen or whatever, and I go through everything. Like, so you search through the whole uh, document for just that word, and it'll be insane sometimes how many times it shows up. And as soon as I get rid of them, suddenly my document is the right length that I want it. So these are good to know. There's always fillers like think is a big one. Feel, she felt herself sliding down. Or you can go, she was sliding down. It makes it stronger. You're not making it passive. Or you can do, she felt a spider crawling up her arm. Or a spider started crawling up her arm. You see how it makes it more active? So that's why we don't want to make it too passive. Look at the big one. She looked across the room. You can use look. I'm not saying don't use look. You can use it, but don't overuse it. So more like she gazed across the room. How does she look across the room? She gazed across the room. She squinted across the room. So that makes it more active and a little bit more interesting. Fine. Dialogue is the next point I want to cover. With dialogue, a lot of people have trouble with dialogue in the punctuation because it can be a bit strange. Like, for my first example is, "Hi, my name is Blue," she said. So as you can see, I have a comma after the word blue, and then the closing quotation. A lot of people just mix it up and go, "Hi, my name is Blue, period," she said, with the capital letter. And that is incorrect because it's one phrase that you're trying to do. So we want that comma in there. You also can put a question mark in place of comma. You can also put an exclamation point in front of the comma. That would be fine. So, but it's just that you're trying to use that isn't the proper format, basically. And if you trying to do the she said in front of this, it would be the same thing. So she said, comma, "Hi, my name is Blue." So the same thing, you want to use your comma. Then the next one is if you're trying to quote someone. So she said, "Did he say holy shit?" So you're quoting someone, so you have that little single quotation. And why I use this one? Because it is confusing sometimes. Where am I putting this question mark? Does look strange if you have the quotation and then the question mark and then your closing quotation. But that's just how it is, because if you had the question mark inside, then that would mean you're quoting somebody else's question. So that is, if that makes sense. So you don't, if he's not actually asking a question and she's quoting his question, you would have that question mark in between the quotes. So the other thing with dialogue, you don't want to bury your dialogue in the middle of a paragraph. It's so easy to do sometimes, but you try to have your dialogue at the beginning of your paragraph or at the end of your paragraph. You don't want it in the middle because you're burying it and you can't see. It's not like you can't see what a person's saying as you're reading it, but it just, when you're reading it, it can be very confusing of who is speaking sometimes even. If there's a little action going on, it will get missed, basically. So another thing I also see, Baby Writer Blue did this constantly. He's having more than one speaker per paragraph. And that was, I will go back to my early things, and I'm like, holy shit, I did this. So yeah, every time somebody speaks, you need a new paragraph. Every time someone speaks, a different speaker. So that is just how that works. And it makes it very clear that who is speaking all on their own line. So it makes it much more visually clear that this is this speaker, this is that speaker. Right. You can hear my bird from upstairs. So, anyways, so now we have misplaced modifiers. What are those? So these are examples of misplaced modifiers. So the first one reads, the patient was referred to the physician with stomach pains. So who has the stomach pains? The patient or the physician? Hopefully with the patient. So the correct way of saying the patient with stomach pains was referred to the physician. So it can make it a little bit funny if you have your misplaced modifiers, but it happens quite a lot. The next example is Tyler almost found 50 cents under the sofa cushion. He almost found, it kind of makes it sound like he didn't actually find 50 cents. So you're like, what did he find instead? So if you fix that, they kind of found almost 50 cents under the sofa cushion. Now that makes more sense. It wasn't quite that many, but he found almost that much money. This is another one I hear quite a lot. I heard that there was a robbery on the evening news. Oh, okay. So that kind of sounds like somebody went on the actual news when they're actually they're talking, they're doing their speech to the camera, and somebody brought them on the camera. That's not what we're talking about, really. The correct way thing, I heard on the evening news there was a robbery. I almost corrected this earlier when I was making the slide to say, on the evening news, I heard there was a robbery. You could also say that, but like it also kind of makes it sound like you were on the evening news. So this is the correct way of doing that. You kind of try to make sure your modifier is not in a weird spot. I do have a comment here. Let me open this chat. And it's a little late since you just left up dialogue, but how would you punctuate paragraphs the same character having the thought of speaking out loud? I put their thoughts in the standard italic format. Ooh, that's a good one. So I do pretty much the same thing, as except that if you're doing italics, you do not need quotations. But that is the difference. So you still if you're saying with the previous, I don't know, give you an example. I need to get out my homework. And she mused to herself, or she thought, or whatever. I do not like she thought because it kind of it's obvious you're thinking, but if you say, I don't know, I'm going to do an example, just for no goodness sake. So then that context, if you are doing an internal thought, you will still say, I need to get out my homework, comma, she thought. But I need to get out my homework, it's all in italics. And then you have the comma with no quotations or anything. And then you're a speaker, your speech tag, if that makes sense. Right. Yes, modifiers are weird. They are weird, especially when you put them in the wrong places. Okay. Next is punctuation. We have a few things. I'm not going to go over like super basic punctuation, like what is the period and all that, because I'm fairly certain you all know what this is. But we have different kinds of punctuation. The three little dots, we call them ellipses. So, and if you have those dots, two dots are vertical like that, those are colons. A little dot and a comma are semicolon, and obviously that is an exclamation point. So with these, we want to actually avoid these as much as possible, because you can use them, but they are not. They're not. How do I put it exactly? They are not great for clear sentences. So they should be like unicorns. Unicorns are rare, and they're not constantly being used for like positive. It just sounds weird. So, like, for example, if somebody is, I don't know, dying, for example, and they're like, help, dot, 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 me, dot, 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 help, dot, dot, dot. It looks very weird, and it does not actually, it's not actually professional. I'm going to say that. Okay. So you use your descriptions instead. You're making your ellipses do all the work, pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's not how the proper grammar is. You try with, she breathes roughly and every breath with a struggle. Help me. That would be how you would say like that. So colors also, try to not use them as well. And the biggest thing I also see in time, everybody uses exclamation points. And like you can use them, but use them sparingly, like a unicorn. If you use them constantly, you are making everything an exclamation all the time. So you want to use your speech tags instead to elevate your writing. Those speech tags are, like she shouted, like help me, whatever. She shouted, she yelled, she cursed, she whatever, right? Then you have a way of saying the reader now knows how they are going to say it. They're not going to rely on your exclamation point. So you can make your writing much stronger without your punctuation. I mean, not you want punctuation without the source of punctuation is what I'm trying to say. Paragraphs. Well, first of all, are we good with? Am I making sense and all that? I hope I am. All right, cool. Awesome. We'll move on to paragraphs. So paragraphs are good. You want to vary your paragraph length. So don't have huge blocks of text because you need some shorter, some longer, because it reads better and it isn't intimidating to read it. I see this quite often. You have a whole grammar is hard. I know. Don't worry, it's all being recorded. You can review it as much as possible later. Oh yeah. So sometimes you see like ginormous blocks of text, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh my gosh, what is this? I'm not going to bother reading it." And that's literally what happens. Because people's brains are weird. They do not focus on that long enough to get through. Because most, especially adults, I mean, all people really, a lot of the time you pay close attention to the first sentence and the last sentence in your paragraph. So if you have a ginormous paragraph, you're just like, I'm just going to skim. But if you have your paragraphs that are all different lengths, then you have a more engaged audience. So single line paragraphs, I'm sure you've seen those. You single line paragraph, which is like a simple single thing. And those are usually mic drop moments or for attention or humor or something like that. So for example, if I have, say, a paragraph, just even with my Rafe story, I'm going to use that example. I have a scene where Rafe is hunting a deer, and the deer is in the forest, and Rafe is trying to creep through the forest, and he's like trying to get close enough, and then he's almost there, and then you wait, and then I have she left, bang spared, and that's it. That's the paragraph. So that's your mic drop moment. That's your tension all of a sudden. You get your eyes popping. Ooh, what's happening next? You can also do it with humor. You can do it like, oh, like this happened, and then suddenly something else happened that the character did not expect. And your next paragraph is, oh shit. Well, and that's your humor kind of thing, and But you can use single paragraph, line paragraphs. You don't want to use them all the time. I've seen that too. I've seen people with all single line paragraphs, and you basically destroyed your idea of your mic drop moments because they're all the same. There are no intentions anymore. That the dialogue also needs to be varied as well, because like I've seen some people start every single paragraph with your dialogue, but like I said earlier, you can say, "I went to store," he said, or you can say, "She said I went to the store," and that actually helps. Break it up a little bit if you instead of starting every single thing with "I did this, I did that," or whatever, right? Because it also makes the page all look the same. So you vary your dialogue. Same thing as you're varying your sentence structure. That's pretty much what it is. You're varying your sentence structure. It helps a lot. Oh, I move on to the next slide. The apostrophes. I'm just going to look one quickly here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so apostrophes. I always think apostrophes is like a weird word, but just the way it went. Okay, so a lot of people confuse this. So your versus your. So your with the hold on, one person coming in. There we go. So as I was saying, a lot of people confuse this, mightily. So we have your with Y-O-U-R versus your Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. So your, the first one, is an adjective. It's something that belongs to you. For example, is that your laptop? I love your shoes. Your garden is huge. And then you have the other one with your contraction of you are. For example, you are so funny. You are a brilliant teacher. Call me when you are free. So that what your means. So that is very confused a lot. So that is how you tell the difference between them. Because if you're putting in the apostrophe, you are instead of if you put it in the other one, for example, then you would be reading, "Is that you are laptop?" Well, that makes no sense. That's what people do sometimes. You have to not use confuse the two. Okay. Next slide is I see people confuse it as well. The differences between the use of the S with the apostrophe and the apostrophe S. So that is usually for a possessive. This is what we call a possessive apostrophe. So because it's a signaling this belongs to someone or something. So the first one, if you have sisters with no apostrophe, then you have two sisters. Those are your multiple female siblings. But you have sisters, apostrophe S. That is one sister's with belonging to something. So my sister's laptop, for example. Or you have multiple sisters who all have something. Then you have sisters like with the S and then the apostrophe. So my sister's husbands. Well, I have two sisters. They both have husbands. I'm going to say my sisters with the final one, husbands. And the other one example I have is mother's love or versus mother's love. So that is another thing. But mother, the first one, the mother's love is your single mother. You only have one mother, and that is her possessive, her love. Yes, it's your ownership. You're right. It's who's owning what. So in the or you have mothers. There's multiple mothers love. There's multiple people. we're talking about. But that's how you can don't confuse them. Some people, I'm going to add a little thing here. It depends. Um, you can use, for like the last example, um, for example, if you say mother's love, like multiple mothers, you can. Some people can. It's not wrong to use another S. For example, if you say mother's love, or with an extra S, it will spell out MOTHERS apostrophe S. You can do that. It's not wrong, but it looks more correct. Coming in, it's not wrong to use an extra S, but it looks more correct with the one. You know, it just makes it a little bit more not mind blowing. All right, cool. We shall move on here. And here's another one that people confuse so much. And it bugs me so much when people confuse them. Because to me, it's simple, but the extra S falling out of favor, other than like Travis or similar. Yeah, I think it is kind of falling out of favor because it looks more confusing with the two S's. But it, like it is more that they are both correct. They're not wrong to have it, but yeah, for the most part, people would use, if you want to do that, to choose one. There's another thing I do too. Sometimes they'll do both in the same manuscript. They'll have the apostrophe S, like the double S kind of thing, or they'll have just the one, and they'll have both of them in the same manuscript. So basically, if you want to use one of them, choose one and make it more cohesive, right? Okay, so there. Ah. So this handy little chart on the left shows there is a possessive thing, right? It's an ownership, like you were saying, like he was saying earlier. It's an ownership. So there with an I, it shows the ownership. It belongs to something, a group of people or animals. Like their house is new. Their thick fur is thick. So the car is theirs. So I know. So this is where so that's there with a little I is your personal thing. So there, like with the arrow, is there, it refers to a place. So, and this is the pronoun. So she lives over there. There's nothing wrong with her. So if you think about this, that, or no, actually, no, that's not right. It's here or there, right? So here or there. So you think about it's actually a place. So over there. And then the last one with the contraction is they are. So isn't so in fact you have a little contraction. You think about that little apostrophe as an A. They are. So they're going to the shopping center. They're nice shoes. So this is where you go, they are going to the shopping center. They are nice shoes. So that's how you tell the difference between them all. But you kind of can remember the first one, first there is with the I, it's a person. The I is a little person. There with an arrow, there, over there. And the last one is they are. So that's how that works. Yeah, it does help a lot because yeah. All right. So here we go. People also confuse that this is more a recent thing, I think, because I actually talked to one of my teachers, and he was saying that people are confusing this more. So I have not seen it that much, but just put you there in there. Um, so then versus then. So then refers to time. Water break. And then refers to comparisons. So for then, for example, I'll stay for an hour, but then I have to leave. So that is your time. Then she did this. I started walking to the store. Then it started raining at the time. Then is your comparison. My brothers are both taller than me. It sounds simple, I know, but people are confusing it a lot for some reason. So if they're taller, I, I, yeah. So that is just kind of fairly simple, but it just refers to time versus comparison, comparing something further. Sorry, farther or further. I can understand people confusing this, but it is also not too bad. Farther is you're measuring something. You jump 2 centimeters farther. Or go away. Farther, or further. Further training is needed. Further your education. The farther is your physical distance. Further is like pretty much everything else. That makes it very simple. You're measuring something, you use farther. Now, the fun part. I really wanted to put this in. Yeah, I'm glad that makes more sense. So I wanted to put this in the English, American English versus British English, because Americans are a country unto themselves, and everybody, a lot of other people obviously use American English, but the thing is that American publishers who have so much more publishers and authors and all that. So a lot of people even use American English, which is fine. But here's the thing. Here's why I wanted to talk about it. It's because I've come across in like critique groups and author swaps and stuff, it's really easy to forget where people come from. So for myself, I'm usually asking when I have people in my critique group, where are you from? So for example, if I had Pisa in my critique group, I'm actually going to look at his grammar and spelling and stuff differently than I would for Stim, because Stim is from UK. So he is from a different country and they use their grammar a little bit differently. So, and people do confuse the two sometimes. And it gets quite funny, but it's actually nice to know the differences. So I just wanted to do that. So this is a really good chart to show the differences between the two Englishes, I should say. So, for example, the American use, in like the first box here, the American tend to use the S, and while British and Canada, because Canada has British grammar, we use the C. So defense is the S, and the C is, British. So license, practice is another one. So we spell it slightly differently. The next box over here on the top is the ER versus RE, like center. The Americans like to do ER. The British will flip it around to RE. So leader is meter, theater. So we do that. So it is kind of interesting. Yes, I absolutely keep it straight. Because I'm used to doing this. And with tends to be doing this grammar workshop, I'm used to spotting the differences. So if I see, I actually not calling people out by name, but there was one person in my critique group who is American. He's from Tennessee, and he often spells center with RE. And I'm like, it's wrong for him. It's right. It looks like it's correct for me, but for him, it's not. So I will say, hey, dude, flip it the other way, So the OR versus OUR, we are very famous. Canada's very famous for putting the U in things. Like color, favorite neighbor. We do put an extra U in there, and we like it. So don't tell us to keep removing it. um, and then you have the common words, which are actually spelled quite differently. The biggest thing with jewelry, in jewelry, we do a double L. We do a double L for quite a few things, to be honest. And pajamas, versus pajamas, we do a Y, but you guys, on Americans, do an A for the pajamas. The plow versus plow. Now, plow in Canada, we actually use both. Sometimes we use a little bit of both words, but it makes it a little bit fun. Program, we use a double M, and America doesn't. Now, mom versus mom, and mom tends to be more British, not Canadian, so we will use mom. And mom was also Australian as well, so use that there. So different things like that. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but we have the ed versus t. This is another one. Dreamed versus dreamt, learned versus learnt, burned versus burnt. So the one I did have trouble with when I was learning was learnt. It just looks a bit strange with learnt, but it is more correct. So we actually do use learned sometimes. We'll use both. We're strange. The next one is the K versus QUE. So like, actually this is wrong for British. The British don't use bank like that. That's actually French. I'm not sure why French snuck into here, but that one's wrong. But we do use check with the QU. We do that in British, and the American is check. And checker versus checker. Now for the game checkers, we do use the K just to make it confusing. So the next one, analyze. Yeah, the Americans use the Z. Oh, actually, you don't. You use Z. Okay. You use Z, we say Z. So the analyze is the Z, and when the British use the S. So analyze, criticize, recognize. I actually started correcting myself on that because I started realizing I was actually spelling it wrong. So because I read so many American novels, I'm like, oops, let's fix that. Double L, enrollment, fulfill, skillful. Actually, I think this is flipped because we use the double L. The Americans don't tend to use the double L. But this is another thing I noticed too with this conference is that the Americans say panelist with a single L. We say panelist with a double L. So I've been like, people keep misspelling this. Why do people keep misspelling this? And then I look it up and I'm like, that's why. And then the last one is the OG versus OGUE, analog, catalog, dialogue. I just, I just put this chart up because it's not entirely correct, but it's mostly correct. But I just put this chart up out of interest because if you're working with other authors from different countries, it's actually good to know how to spell it in your own country and pick it out if they're spelling it wrong someplace else. So yeah. Okay. This last one I just put in for humor because I've spotted this with at least 2 people this weekend. And if you are old, I'm not getting old, but I've seen if you're doing spaces, know how you do your sentences. Like I went to the store, period space. I bought this. Older people, the older generation, actually puts in 2 spaces between each sentence. And this is a leftover from typewriters. You actually, a lot of people, I learned on a typewriter, to be honest. And I started out with the 2 double spaces between each sentence. But then I learned later on when I'm just over the computer, no, you actually don't do that. But I still see some people doing this. And I'm like, dude, we are in the 2000s. Please use 1 space in between. So I just extra little tidbit. So I'm actually very much on time. So if anybody have any questions, comments, or anything that they would like to ask before I close up this final panel, and I'm going to have more time. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, go ahead. What is your if you want to speak out loud, you can do that. Or if you want to type it, that is okay too. You could put it there. Oh. T, what do you want to say or ask? Oh, affect and affect and effect. That's a good one. So affect is usually causing from a person, and effect is a thing usually. So the affect is actually no. The better way to explain it. Okay, the better way to explain it is affect. It's a verb. Effect is a noun. Okay, so if you're saying something like that, something like the 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 storm affected my mood. So because that is a verb. So the effect of the storm was making my mood bad. So that is a noun because you can because that's how that is used. But it usually brings out a verb brings about a specific change or something. Right. So it's a noun or a verb. So I was affected by this thing. No, I know that's not quite a verb, but still, I was, this this whole thing affected me. It's still a verb, and if you are using effect, let's say she walked into the room and had great effect on the audience. You know that is an noun because that is the thing that they call the audience. I'm glad that makes sense. Was there anybody else? Anybody else have any questions? I'm glad it helps very much. Right. So, all right, no more questions. Then I will okay. Good. Yes, T. Okay. Fine.
Okay. What should I
Hi.
start? Okay. So I got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So what was the question? Oh yeah. Why are you gonna call me out so much?
I'm glad it was helpful. I mean,
Yeah,
like
well,
it's not
well,
sad. I mean,
well, yeah, but you know how many times I was like, oh, I do that. Oh, that's me. Is that why you wanted me here? So you could
I
call me
know.
out. Call me out.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna maybe be slightly spicy with this, but unfortunately, with our current, it happens pretty much here, there, wherever. But in school, people used to be taught grammar and English and everything, and be really solidified. Now, for my own case, I saw it even when I was in school that the downgrade of teaching it. Yeah. So it was I've been seeing like when I was in school, I was homeschooled up until grade 11 and 12. So grade 11 and 12, I went to a high school. And when I was homeschooled, I was really good at the grammar. I had grammar workshop, like not workshop, workbooks. There we go. And I worked in them, and it was very clear. And I studied them, and I was very good at it, which is why I'm doing this. But when I went to high school, and did grade 11 English. No, I did grade 12 English. I grade 12 English. The teacher basically, he would do like one sentence of grammar a day, and that was all. And I'm like, how how do kids know what to do? They don't. So that is my little personal rant about it. And also because the way the education system is that people, the teachers or the schools, I would say, they constantly push their students from grade to grade without actually, um, not, I'm not saying they don't teach them, they do, but they they don't fail people enough. So if people don't know how much what to learn on this grade, and they move them on to the next grade without them completing the they'll just push them on and on. Well, that means like if they're spelling and grammar in say grade 4 is not solid, and there's been moved on before they are, you get people in high school, even college and university that don't know how to spell, they don't know how to do grammar, and so it's been really a problem. So, which is why I'm doing this, is because we get to the, um, like you're trying to write a book, you have brilliant ideas, and you have a lot of them, good stuff to share, but you don't know how to, um, like present it properly. And it's not just you, no, not you. I'm not just calling you out with this. I'm just saying it is such a common problem everywhere. And to me, sometimes I'm like, I don't understand why this is such an epidemic of a problem, but it's because we are constantly moving things along. We don't allow people to fail and make mistakes. You are. That's just the way of life. We should be able to do that. So, and you kind of like, yeah, so having a review of this now and then is super helpful. Like sometimes I
I
think,
know. I was just playing because you. I was over here. Oh, I do that. Oh, I do
I
that.
know, I know, I know. Like I'm not trying to
And
call you
then
out in particular. I'm just saying that I've not. It's not just a you problem. I've seen this with a
I
lot of
know, I
people.
know, I
Yeah,
know. I just did it just to make fun, make
yeah.
jokes because
I
I'm
know.
like, oh, I do that, and then you were like, oh, well, you should come to the panel. I was like, oh, okay, and
I
then
know.
I'm late, and you're like, get in here. I'm like,
Like it
so
is.
this
No,
is
no. I'm just
why.
yeah. I know. Like, and that it's another thing too. But also, I'm going to make that point before I move on to the next question I see. Is that because we're so dependent on technology, we do, our phones try to guess our words for us, and people use AI or whatever try to guess what you're trying to say. People don't actually learn, know, like memorize the grammar rules and stuff, so they take shortcuts and whatnot. So it does make it a bit more difficult. But that's probably a very spicy thing to end the panel with. But so, okay, so next question. My question would be, what other resources would you recommend specifically beyond this, with books and podcasts, YouTube courses, other? That's a great question. But you can. I like there are manuals for English grammar, especially in like you go on like I'm not going to say like we have chapters. I think you have something else in the States, but there are places for like languages. There are definitely manuals that I can use. What am I looking for? Because there are people who are um, like I have a book like here somewhere on like because I'm Canadian and I'm not exactly bilingual. I have a manual for like French grammars and stuff. So, but it's actually an English one. You can definitely check that out. YouTube and courses, I'm not actually as familiar with that, but there are plenty of places you can check out that will give you a review of grammar and stuff. And actually, sometimes I even do, if you want to test yourself, sometimes you can even go to, when they ask you for your language, like the AAA, BBB, whatever, right? It's like, and because some people want a testing of how strong your language is, like in multiple, and usually in Canada we do this quite often because they want to know your level in English and you want to know your level in French, and so they make you write a little test to find out where you're strong, and that actually helps quite a lot, to be honest. If you're not sure where you are in your language capabilities and grammar and spelling and whatnot, that's a great way to test and see where you are, and you can figure out, okay, I didn't know this. Let's learn a bit more about that. I hope that kind of cleared up that question. Okay. If there is anything, yeah, for sure. The test are, yeah, just a kind of a quick little review. Sometimes just the okay, I didn't quite get this correctly. Let's study this more. So, all right, awesome. I really appreciate you guys coming and listening, and I was really happy to talk about grammar. As you can tell, I like it, and I am passionate about grammar. It sounds weird, but I can. So I'm very happy to help, and I will. And this is the official close of the 2024 writing conference. So that is super awesome. And now I will pop out, and I'll be doing a closing address in a few minutes as well. So tune in for that. Thank you again. Have a good rest of your night.